Cthulhu. I feel like I probably should have had this loaded up beforehand, but whatever. Not a big deal. Pierce, Colden, and Bradley decided to team up to solve the Sarah Hawkins case. They have a new trail to follow Francis Sanders, an art collector and friend of the painter, who died right in front of Pierce. The detective goes to his house in order to speak to his widow about the shambler that the unfortunate man mentioned before he died.
What can I do for you, sir?
Mrs. Sanders, I'm a private detective. We must talk about your husband and his ties to Sarah Hawkins. Can I come in?
You may. However, before we go any further, please know that my husband died yesterday.
That is precisely what brings me here.
Well, well, look who's here.
You know each other?
We met briefly. Time enough to iron out a few matters. The main thing is that we understood one another. The brave detective has a talent for sticking his nose into my business.
I bump into her every
Cat's telling you
time
to
I'm
get some clothes
investigating
on.
someone's death.
It's a small island, detective. My island. It's better that it's you bumping into me.
You're investigating Francis' death. Why? Who hired you?
I spoke to Francis before he died. His story suggests a link to a case I'm working on.
Well, since this business has got nothing to do with me, I'll be in your husband's office, Irene. We'll carry on later.
Very well, Miss Baker. This way, Mr. Pierce. And do make yourself comfortable. It would seem that you have much to tell me.
And that I do.
May I inquire as to when you had the opportunity to talk to my husband?
Yesterday, I met him at the hospital. He spoke to me about Sarah Hawkins.
Oh, of course he spoke to you about her. That's all he talked about. Sarah Hawkins and her paintings. Please forgive my tone. The fact is that I have not been allowed to see him since he was interned. You, on the other hand, a perfect stranger, were able to see him and even talk with him the day he died. How was he? Were you present when he had this attack? What happened?
What happened to your husband is terrible, Mrs. Sanders. But from what I saw, it was inevitable.
What the heck is happening
The man
to
I
your
met
dress?
yesterday had lost his reason. He suffers no longer, if you would allow me such a platitude.
Of course. Thank you for your kind words. Nobody in that hospital would have deigned to speak them to me. However, it will require more than that to soothe my mind. I need to understand. How could this happen? In a reputed institute? And right before your eyes? Did you not do anything to help him?
With all due respect, Mrs. Sanders, it was you who sent him to this asylum, not me.
How dare you? What was I supposed to do, Detective? Upon seeing such a brilliant mind disintegrate in this way, waking with a start every night with him shrieking in horror, petrified before this accursed painting, unable to look away, until he managed to gouge his eyes out with
What
his
is
own
up with that
hands.
dress? It's just
I should
bugging
have
the
listened
hell
to
out of
Dr.
me.
Fuller. Let him intern him months ago. If I am to be
What?
condemned, it is because I did not act sooner.
She's just
I'm not
chubby.
here to condemn you, Mrs. Sanders.
She thick.
Oh, I'm tired, Mr. Pierce.
She got a thick face.
I would be grateful if you could tell me what you expect of me, and then leave.
Her hands go from her arm to her hand. There's no wrist.
May I ask you what Miss Baker is
Yeah.
doing here? How do you know her?
My business with Miss Baker is private,
Yes, Cat.
Mr. Pierce.
But you do know what kind of business Miss Baker is in, don't you?
I am no fool. Please believe that much, at least.
Did your husband talk to you about Sarah Hawkins' visitor? A shambler, to use his precise terms.
Well, you can imagine that's all he talked about. It's exhibited at the center of the gallery. No better place for the painting that endowed him with the privilege of such a shameful and miserable end to his life.
Yes.
The Shambler is a painting by Sarah Hawkins.
Who else to paint such horrors? Take a look for yourself, if you feel so inclined.
It is my only lead at this stage. I suppose I have nothing to lose.
Then you have paid no heed. For my part, I refuse to set foot in that gallery again. But if you're so eager to see it...
Thank you, Mrs. Sanders. I won't be long.
Irene Sanders, age 41. It's clear that she holds Sarah Hawkins responsible for the death of her husband, but what I don't understand about Irene is the mix of sadness and insensitivity. It looks like she'd given up on her husband long before his horrid death in the cellars of the Riverside Institute. Oh, I can't even talk to her anymore.
Did she really care for him after all?
Dear Madam, I acknowledge receipt of the letter in which you demand the body of your deceased husband. I'm sorry to inform you that I cannot agree to return his body to you. At the moment of his interment, you signed a discharge allowing me to dispose of his body as I see fit. I extend my deepest condolences to you. Thomas Fuller.
The day the Shambler came into the Sanders' lives. Frances Sanders and Sarah Hawkins were close. Friends, even? A house of artists. A house of artists. Sanders' accession register. He wrote beside the Shambler, "Finally." What did Sarah Hawkins fear so much that she didn't want to sell the painting?
Oh, no.
He finally won. Was Sanders aware of his imminent doom? She first refused to sell the painting. How did that make her feel? Was she jealous of Sarah Hawkins? The Shambler. I need to see it.
Cross-checking this information given by Francis Sanders and his widow, it is possible to reconstruct the events that led to the interment of Sanders. Everything points to Sanders and Sarah Hawkins being closely linked, at least by the interest the collector showed in the artist's work, but more probably by a certain friendship, attested by the repeated refusals of Sarah Hawkins to sell the painting called The Shambler. Against all expectations, she finally gave it away for free. The feelings still shown by Irene Sanders toward Sarah Hawkins are evidently derived from what she considers to be the artist's responsibility. Madness struck Sanders a short while after he gained possession of the painting.
Let's see what this cylinder has to say once it's inserted in a phonograph.
Irene, I made a mistake. I fear that it might be too late for me. Nobody should enter, except to burn everything. I never had the courage. Pay somebody to do it. He's inside my head. I see him behind my eyelids each time I shut my eyes. I can't take any more. I can't hold him back. Forgive me.
That accursed gallery. Those accursed paintings. That accursed Sarah.
Really? I can't talk to you about it?
Irene, I made a mistake. I fear that it might be too late for me. Nobody should enter, except to burn everything. I never had the courage. Pay somebody to do it. He's inside my head. I see him behind my eyelids each time I shut my eyes. Irene, I made a mistake. I fear that it might be too late for me. Nobody should enter, except to burn everything. I never had the courage. Pay somebody to do it. He's inside my head. I see him behind my eyelids each time I shut my eyes.
I could use one of those. A strange Amerindian pendant. Another volume of the Reverend's wife's diary. Strange. For months, Sarah Hawkins refused to part with her painting, to finally give it away for nothing.
Dear Francis, I beg you to give up all hope of ever owning this accursed painting. If our friendship has any meaning to you, please spare me the weight of guilt. I cannot be the architect of your fall. I beg you, my dear friend, forget the Shambler. Your friend, Sarah Hawkins. This is kind of an encyclopedia of monsters and unknown creatures. I'm beginning to believe that they exist.
That's twice you've stepped on my toes, Detective. Try not to make a habit of it.
I've got a lot of bad habits.
Some can be more fatal than others. What have you come looking for in this gallery?
I have a well-off client in Boston who heard about the death of Francis Sanders and wanted me to size up his estate. before making an offer to his widow.
Perfect, Detective. The pretext? The body language? I would have bought it if it was the first time I'd seen your face. You're a good talker, Pierce. Your story will do for the moment.
There's more than that, Miss Baker.
So people have been talking behind my back. I was almost beginning to like you, Mr. Pierce. But it stays Cat for you.
You knew the Sanders?
Irene is a friend of mine.
And you? What brings you to the Sanders home?
I'm here on business. Irene asked me to liquidate all these paintings. She doesn't intend to hang around here for long.
Why you?
Believe it or not, there aren't many collectors on Darkwater. It needs someone with a network, and a means of transport to the mainland. A choice that comes down to Fitzroy and me. And I'm far more pleasant, wouldn't you say?
These artifacts date from pre-Columbian times.
That's it? Just,
The man transformed an entire wing of his manor into an art gallery.
Sexy. Oh yeah, you will. Look at that. Yes.
Why was he so interested in old weapons?
Okay. You want to close that, babe? I know. There she is. The old shambler.
What the hell was that?
There goes. Oh, wait. Oh, this is volume 2. I missed one. Yeah, you found me. Oh, of course. Yep, saw that coming.